Hello all my JavaScript friends, this is the Virtuoid, aka Mike Smith, and this is Fun with JavaScript, our racing game. This is part number 4 of our Cars series, in which we will actually develop a model for each one of our cars. So we just don't have those stock little blocks that we created with the last video. No, we're going to have actual running cars on the track. So this is where we're going to show you how to bring in the models for the car. And this is what our webpage will eventually look at. So there's going to be a couple things, actually more than a couple of things that have changed from what we've done last time. So what I will do here is we're going to basically split this into 3 parts. First thing is I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate the web page based upon this what you see here and show you the changes that we made. Then I'm going to show you this particular car that I've already brought in as a model, and I've already tuned it up to be used with the race. So I'll show you how we did that and why you see all these mesh 0, mesh 1s, mesh 2, mesh 8s and everything on the left hand side, why those are going to be very, very important. And then the third part, which I think might be the most fun part, is I'm going to go onto a place or a website where we can do free 3D models, and I'm going to download a model and I'm going to take you through the whole process of grabbing a model, getting it all fixed up, and getting it ready to be run on this game. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing I did is I'm going to create a models directory underneath the source directory, and that's where all of the models are going to go. That will also include the CarBase model that we currently have underneath our JavaScript directory. So I am going to move CarBase down here underneath cars. Yeah, I'm going to refactor all that. Yes, it's going to start messing things up, but that's okay. So let's go back to test car. Let's make sure it made that change here. Yeah, models, cars, CarBase. Yeah, good. It did find it. That's great. Okay, so now we got cars under CarBase here underneath cars. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into CarBase itself, and since basically everything is almost exactly the same as we have it within our FWJS race. And by the way, you can also see all of this under FWJS-race in the Virtuoid account inside GitHub. Just make sure you take a look at the branch release /0.0.3. And of course, eventually this release will go in. I'll keep release here all the time, but it'll eventually go into main. But for right now, main still has some of our original work in it. So again, that's FWJS.race. It's a public directory. The branch you want to take a look at is release /0.0.3. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy over absolutely everything from the CarBase, and I'm going to show you the changes that are within the real CarBase program that was not included within the demos that we had earlier. So let me just copy that here real quick, and let me just show you what we've got here. All right, first of all, all this is exactly the same. All this is exactly the same. All this is exactly the same. The constructors, I've got a couple of defaults that we didn't have before. All that's exactly the same. In the build, I'm also doing all of the defaults automatically within the build. So basically our build was from this point onward. I've added some defaults in right here. No big deal in this particular case. There's a junk routine here which will dispose of all the different meshes that we have inside there. Bunch of getter routines. This is going to come important when we start building the track in our next set of videos. The add model hasn't changed, scale vector hasn't changed, the add wheelbase hasn't changed, the add wheel. The only thing here is this is where I was experimenting with having a round wheel or ellipse type wheel or a cylinder type wheel. This will eventually disappear because I found that ellipse works a heck of a lot better. So that's why you'll if you go to the code now, obviously you'll see the case round, case ellipse, and case cylinder. No big deal there. There's the add chassis, the add box, the set physics, and the hash to color, and that's it. So basically it's almost exactly the same as we had before, just a couple of extra things added in there. Let's see what is next that we need to add in there. In actuality, I think that should be, yeah, nope, sorry. Let's go to our test car HTML. And within the test car.html, let's add in right here the meshes, and this is where those meshes that were showing up in the upper left hand corner are going to occur. That's where they're going to appear here. There are going to be some big changes here on the testcar.js, so let me pop in this code here and then I will get right back to you. Okay, and now I'm getting right back to you. So a couple of things I want to show you that we've done differently. First of all, we've changed the camera from a free camera to what they call an arc rotate camera. And this basically means is I'm going to have this camera always point toward this position, and this position is going to be basically pointing toward the car. And every time I move the mouse or anything, it's going to rotate around that particular object. And that's so we can see the model from all different sides. The free camera that we had before, we basically could see it, and then we just use the mouse and use the arrow keys to be able to move the camera. This one, everything is fixated on one particular point, and we'll just rotate around it so we can see up, the top, the bottom, the left, right, whatever. It doesn't really matter there. Nothing really else has changed here. I've taken off the rotation because I just don't want it whirling all over the place. This is the part that's really has changed. Now before, I kept the old code and commented out here. Before we just basically did a new CarBase, did a car build, and did the render loop. And that was it, that's all we did. Well, we really can't do that now. When we load in all of the models are going to be asynchronous in scope. And of course that makes sense, it's got to go out there, it's got to grab the file, it's got to read it all in, it's got to process it, and then once it finishes, because some files may be a megabyte size, some files may be 10 megabyte size, but once it finishes, it's going to then inform the system that it's all ready to go. So everything is going to be asynchronous, so we've got to change our loading to asynchronous. And this is basically what I have done. So basically everything is based upon this particular model name here. I've got an ID, I've got a wheel type of ellipse, because remember I said before I had tested between circle, ellipse, and the round cylinder, excuse me. So this code is still expecting some sort of wheel type. But the big thing here is, again, is that model name. And the model name is going to basically figure out, okay, am I going toward a particular model JavaScript file, or I'm going to go to the CarBase. If there's no model name that is specified, we're going to go to CarBase. Otherwise, we're going to go to a particular model file. And this will become very clear once I load in this LowPolyCar model that you saw at the very beginning of the video. Right now, it's going to be blank, so we're going to go back to just keep on using CarBase. This is the first one. We can do since we're at a top level module here, that's what test car is that we can actually do awaits within the top level module. I don't have to do it within an async paragraph. So I basically do an import of the model path, and that model path is going to be the JavaScript, either the CarBase or the model name itself. And this is basically allows me to be able to do a dynamic import. So I don't have to put there and say import at the very top of the file. I can dynamically import it based upon the model name that is passed here. And that will become very important when we start integrating with the track, because if you remember the whole game originally, you selected your 4 cars and then it went to the track. Well, everything got stored into a local storage, and that local storage had the model name. And so that model name is used here to be able to grab the path. But also more importantly is that, and again I'll show you this here in just a second, there is a specified static method on every single car called load. And this particular load will load in the model. Now for CarBase, in fact, let's go to CarBase here. Let's find that load. Let's find the load. Where's the load? There it is. You see that it doesn't have anything to load because there's no model. So I'm just I'm just resolving null. But every single model here will have the correct code to be able to actually go out there, find the GLB file, which we'll talk about here in a second, load it in, and get everything prepared. The base one just simply has that. So that's the 2 most important things here, is that I am dynamically loading in the JavaScript file, which will represent the model of the file. And that's either going to be the CarBase, which is what we've been using here, or it is the model itself. Once I'll show you how that works. And then we're going to load in the model, the physical model itself. And this model is the GLB file, which is what you see on the screen here. The JavaScript files here is just able to control it. Build mesh list is really, really simple. It's no big deal. That's just what builds that list that you saw in the upper left-hand corner. And then process clicks on tells me when I click on the checkbox there what it's going to do. And again, once we get to an actual model, you'll see why it's very important to have that up there. Other than that, it works exactly the same way as we had before, where we were calling it Car Factory, because that's basically what it is. We got a factory model here, is that we're just calling Car Factory and nothing else. We don't care what it gives us, what model it gives us, either with its base or with its model. I don't care. I'm just calling it Car Factory. and I'm passing everything that I had before, and I'm doing card build, which is what I did before, and I'm doing the render loop, which is what I did before. So unless I made a stupid mistake, which is extraordinarily likely, this should run. So I'll get things up and running, we'll test it out, and we'll see what happens. And by golly, gee, it worked the first time. In fact, I'm just taking a look at, yep, see, no errors, yay! Well, I haven't gotten the icon yet, but I'm not gonna worry about that. But we got no errors, and as you can tell here, this is how the arc camera rotate works. Basically, this allows us to be able to rotate and take a look at everything that we have on the CarBase. And of course, the CarBase, if you remember correctly, was just a simple box. And the wheels are not showing up here because originally we don't have the wheels showing up. They're there just to help get the physics correct, but they're not part of the actual model. The box itself is the only part of the model that we have, and this is the box that we will be replacing with all of our different models. So there it is. So it actually worked. Yay! So step number 2 is let's bring in an actual model that I've worked with before and show you how that code works. All right, let's bring in the model. Okay, 3 parts to this. First of all, we're going to need the physical model itself. And this is a gLTF formatted model file. And gLTF is a format for a 3-dimensional scene or model. That's just the way it is. The extension is usually GLB, and there's a number of files or programs out there that can convert it for you or get you that particular file. I personally use Blender, and so one of the things that I will do here, and we'll do this on the next part of the video, is I'm going to, once I find a model I want to use, I'm going to make sure it's in a Blender file format. I'm going to roll into Blender, and then Blender will export it as that gLTF file. Once we get that, that's our physical model. Then we need to create the JavaScript to be able to control that model. And then finally, we're going to change our test program here to be able to, say, hey, use this model instead. So let's get to it. And again, I'm not going to show you the whole process of doing it. I'm just going to show you what we've done. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to get I'm going to call it LowPolyCar, and I'm going to place that into the models. And, oh yeah, that's what a GLB file looks like. We're not going to worry about that. So anyway, so there's my excuse me. So there's my LowPolyCar model itself, the GLB file. I'm going to next create a directory, and I'm going to call it LowPolyCar. And we're going to create a JavaScript file called LowPolyCar. Of course we are. And it's going to be a blank JavaScript file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw some JavaScript in here, and we'll take a look and see what happens. Because it's actually real simple. So there we are. The big thing here is we're going to extend CarBase, and this is going to be extremely important here because the idea here is that CarBase is, of course, taking care of all of our wheels, is taking care of all the physics. All this program is really responsible for is grabbing that model and making sure that model is located correctly on top of the wheels. That's it. That's all that it does. So this is a very simple little program here. All I'm really doing is I'm going to overload some of the methods that are appearing on the CarBase so that when we create this new car, it will call the CarBase routines for everything else, but for specifically anything dealing with the models, it will call this routine. So got a constructor super args. This .message.1, this is where I changed the color of it, and I'll show you how I figured that out here in just a minute. And this is a scaling factor. And this is something basically, I am scaling the main model itself. And the main model itself happens to be inside is mesh number 0. The GLB files, when they get loaded in by Babylon, will have an array of meshes, which represent different pieces of the car. Mesh 0 is always the master mesh that contains everything else. So therefore, I want to be able to scale it because if it's going to be too big for me, I want to scale it out. So this particular one has a 0.9. Basically, the idea here is you'll just bring it in as a normal 1, and we'll show that here in just a second. And if it's obviously too big or too small, we'll do the scaling in place here. Here's the important thing. Here's that static routine. Remember inside CarBase, we have a static one called load here that just does a promise.resolve. It doesn't do anything else. But within each of our static files, we've got to have within our models, we have to have a way for Babylon to be able to load in that GLB file. And here it is right here. It's called an import mesh async, asynchronous operation. I don't care about mesh names. That doesn't really bother me at all. What does bother me is I need a root URL and I need a screen file name itself. And then this basically goes out into models under LowPolyCar, models right here, and then grabs the LowPolyCar.glb. That's it. That's all it does. But the important thing here is that is asynchronous. So when test car comes back inside here and it says, okay, I've got that imported, next thing it's going to do is it's going to call that load method, that static load method, and be able to load in that model. And it's got to be asynchronous, so we've got the little wait at the very beginning here. And again, we're a top level module, so we don't have to have an async. We don't have to have this await within an async function. If we did, we'll just program it in there. It's no big deal. So that's the important thing here. The other thing is this section right here. Now, if you recall correctly from the previous video when we were developing CarBase, let's go to the build section. All the build section here is that we do the # add wheelbase to add the wheelbase. We do the # add wheel to add the wheels. We do a # add chassis to add chassis. We do the # add box to add the box. And the add box is what's going to be is the model itself. And all of these routines look, a lot like this. Here we go. We do the mesh builder. We do the create box. We do the create spheres or the create cylinders. And we do on the chassis, here's the create box itself. But add box doesn't do that. It just returns this .add model. That's it. Doesn't do anything else. And then within CarBase, the add model is right there. So all we have to all we have to do is override add model, overload, I think is the actual correct term, overload add model to be able to do our own modeling. Because once we get to this section here, our model has been added and we got to do certain things that are specific to this model. Every model is going to be different, so we may have to do tweaky things. Like notice I've got two different rotations done here. Honestly, I don't know why I've done that, but that's just the way it is. I've got to set telemetry meshes. Telemetry mesh may be different on each particular model. And that's, again, the telemetry mesh is the mesh that we're going to be taking a look at, in which the finish line will know when the car has crossed the finish line. We got to know what the actual box is, because we're going to return what the main box, quote unquote, we're going to be returning what the main mesh is, and the main mesh is always going to be mesh 0, so that remains the same. And so that basically does the add model. Now, I know what you're saying. Why the heck didn't we just change add box? Well, the reason why is that happens to be a private method. I am of the opinion, or at least I'm trying to be of the opinion here, that I should only expose variables or methods that I want to expose. I don't need in the base here to be able to expose, hey, this is how you add a wheelbase, this is how you add a wheel, this is how you add a chassis, or how to set up the physics. I don't need to know that if I'm somebody consuming this thing. All I want to do is, I want a car. And I want to be able to say, I have a couple of tires here, I've got a chassis, I got a body. I don't care about how you build it. I just want the car. I mean, you go out and buy a car, do you go out to the manufacturer and you sit there and say, hey, I want to make sure I know exactly how you've built this car? No, of course not. You go to the dealership, you buy your car, and you drive off. That's it. So all of these are private because nobody has to know about that. But the problem here is that with the models, I've got to be able to know, or be able to change how the model is built into the car. So that's the reason that although things like add chassis has everything it needs to do to add the chassis, the add box just has a return add model in it. And add model is a public method, not a private method. So therefore, and that's the only caveat I had here. I would like to refactor this and do it a different way, but that's what I have here. So I do have an add model as a public method that will allow me now for the LowPolyCars to, for the model JavaScripts to be able to override it. And this again is very, very simple. I've already got the models. I'm doing a scale in place, clones, all that kind of fun stuff. No big deal. No problems there. So that will do the LowPoly. So that's part number 2. That does the JavaScript, and that's it. I don't have to do anything else because the CarBase takes care of everything else for me. All the physics are taken care of. All the wheels are taken care of. All the dimensions are taken care of. All I got to care about here is how that model looks on the chassis. That's it. That's all I really have to care about. Last thing is the test car. we already have the code here for loading up the models manually. All I'm going to do here now is I'm going to say LowPolyCar as the model name. That's it. Now it's going to come down here to model path and say, okay, I'm not going to get CarBase. I'm going to get model name.js. Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to get the car factory from the LowPolyCar JavaScript. I'm going to do the load from the LowPolyCar JavaScript, which is going to do the import mesh async for the GLB file that I've got listed right there. Then I'm going to build the mesh model, and I'm going to explain that here in just a second. What I want to do here is that we've gotten all of this. Let's make sure I've got everything saved. And now I've got everything saved. Let's go ahead and see if it actually runs. And it does. Notice, however, the things didn't show up in the left-hand corner. And the reason that is I forgot to add in some extra CSS code that I had to pop in there real quick. So, my bad. Let's go ahead and put this down here. There we go. All right, let's save that off. Let's go back to our screen. There we go. Okay. So this now basically gets us to the screen that we had at the very beginning. We can take a look at every single one of these cars. Now, that's our model. That's it. But there's something very important here. Let's go back to the code. Notice that I've got this set up right here. Meshes1.material.albedo color equals this color. And I've got the telemetry here for also meshes number 1. Now, why did I do that? Well, the thing here is that there's a bunch of meshes, in this case 8 meshes on this particular car. Mesh number 0 is all of the meshes put together. Mesh number 0 is the parent mesh. But all these other meshes represents different pieces of this car. So the idea here is if I want to change the color of the car, I need to know which mesh to change the color of. So what this does is that these checkboxes here will toggle the visibility of a particular mesh. Let's look at that code real quick. Under test car, here's the build mesh. It's no big deal. I'm just doing LIs and a checkbox. But I'm setting the data index to the index number of each individual mesh. Yeah, it's a mess. But anyway, I'm getting that mesh number, and all I'm doing is I'm just doing the toggle on is visible. That's it. I'm not doing much of anything else. So there is a is visible method or a visible property on there that says whether that mesh is visible or it is not visible. And that's very important. For instance, is visible I've set to false for all of the CarBase ones. But for here, this is the everything else is true for the model itself. But by clicking each of these meshes, I can determine which mesh is going to need to get colors. So 8. Notice that that's the inside of all 4 wheels. So first of all, I already know that this particular model, I can't have individual wheels turning because all 4 of them are going to turn at the same time. Well, actually, I probably could. It's just going to take some extra coding. Mesh number 7 is the outer part of the wheels. We're just running on rims now. Mesh number 6 is the undercarriage. There you can see that right there. Mesh number 5 are the headlights. This is just in case somebody doesn't want to get out of the fast lane in the race. Mesh number 4 is the bumper. Mesh number 3 is the insides. Mesh number 2, I don't know, back bumper? I have no clue what mesh number 2 is. I don't see it. Oh, there it is. Something really tiny. There we go. It's kind of like a cover for the windshield. That's what it looks like. There we go. Okay. Whoops. Hold on. Let me back up a little bit more. Man, I have bad mouse control. And mesh number 1 is the body. So one of the first things that I did here is I went through this process and I sat there and go, okay, so mesh number 1 happens to be the body. That's very, very important. So that means I can come inside here, inside my LowPolyCar, and I can sit there and set the albedo color of the material within the mesh to whatever color I pass to it, which is good. So now if I want to go back here to my test car and I want to make it green, which is red, green, blue, save it. Now it's green. So I can change that. So that allows me to change it to any color just by changing mesh 1. So that's the important thing. What's so very important about all these check marks and everything is that I can toggle them on and off and determine which ones I can change the color on. So if there happen to be 3 or 4 different ones I could change the color on, then I would come inside LowPolyCar and do whatever changes I have to do with that. The other very important thing here is I've got to be able to tell the computer or the race game what telemetry mesh to use. And that basically, again, the telemetry mesh is how I figure out what point to cross the finish line. Now in this particular case, mesh 1 actually works the same as good, with the exception, if you look very closely, let's zoom in just a little bit here. See if we can get that in the middle. There we go. There we go. Much better. With the exception of the bumpers. And which one were the bumpers? I think that was, all right, wasn't that one. Wasn't that one. That was beep beep. All right, there are the bumpers. So to have the telemetry mesh, I've set the telemetry mesh for also number 1, which represents the entire body. One improvement that we'll want to make to this program later on is to have an array of telemetry meshes. Right now it just has 1. In actuality, probably the bumper, which was that 3? No, it wasn't 3. Was that 4? Yeah, it was 4. The bumper may have been the better one to set, because notice the bumper goes all the way around the car. Let's go all the way to the back here. Yeah, so that goes all the way around the car. So that may even be a better one to set than number 1. My original one that I had, it was set to number 1. So if we come back here, let's just change that right now. So the telemetry mesh is going to be number 4. And that basically that now says that if any part of mesh number 4, which is, I changed it so it's got a refresh. So mesh number 4 is the bumper. So any part of the bumper hits the finish line, it is declared as finished. And that's it. There is nothing else to it. So as you can tell here, adding a model is extraordinarily easy to do. The hardest thing is actually trying to get the rotations correctly, which is actually, this is wrong. I need to fix that one. Getting the rotations fixed correctly, making sure the colors are correct, making sure the scaling is incorrect, making sure we got the correct import done, all that kind of fun stuff. But that's generally it. So what I want to do for the next part of this video is I'm going to go and get a new 3D model that I've never seen before, and let's create one from scratch. That's next. Okay, let's go ahead now and let's actually load in a for real model from a website and take you through the whole process of how easy it is to be able to get models out there into the program. So I found this site called Free3D, which I can get free 3D models that are only licensed for personal use. So obviously you can't use them in a game or anything like that, but they're great for being able to play around with things like what we're doing here with models. I've got it set for Blender. Yep, in fact, we'll do that, click right there. I got it set for doing Blender files because I'm using Blender to be able to convert it to gLTF. I know I said ITF earlier, it's actually LTF because I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. And I've got it set for doing different vehicles. So these are the different car ones it has. And so one of the things I did find out when I was playing around with this originally is I loaded one in there that just it ended up looking pretty bad. And so, you know, I just, you know, so you may have to try 2 or 3 different ones. So what I want to do is kind of just look around now. Here's this LowPolyCar. This is the one that we worked with in the last section of this video. Here's a superstar. Well, that's $10. Here's a Camaro. I wonder if we could do the Camaro. That might be interesting to try to do the Camaro, but we'll skip that one. Let's see, $3. Because basically, I'm looking for anything that happens to be free. Ferrari Testarossa. God, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? All right, so let's check out the Ferrari Testarossa here real quick. It is low poly. That's good. It does have textures and materials, so that might be a problem. It's 7.36 megabytes. That should be okay. So let's go ahead and download that. So we got the Ferrari Testarossa. So let me go to downloads. And what I'm doing on my other screen here, which obviously you can't see, is I'm extracting the Ferrari Testarossa. And we're going to be looking for the Blender files. Okay, and so what we're going to do here's Blender. And let's go ahead and we'll get out that one. We'll bring in the Ferrari Testarossa. We'll say open. And there's our Ferrari Testarossa. Yeah, I got a sneaking suspicion this one's not going to run very well. Man, look at those. I really don't want to have the materials there for anything. Oops. I keep forgetting how to run this thing. So there's what we have. This thing's got a lot here. A lot of backgrounds and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to clean it up just a little bit. On the right hand side here, I've got cameras and all that. I don't really need a camera. Let's kill the cameras. We don't need that. There's the Ferrari Testarossa itself. These are different tires. Oh, this one has different tires. That's good. That's really, really good. I don't know what the cylinder is. We'll kill it. Oh, okay. Oh, that's the outside. Good. All right. Well, so we'll kill that one. The plane.008. All right. There's the body. Material 1. All that. Let's kill that. Oh, that's not what we wanted to do. So let's Control Z. It looks like that's what we're going to have to work with. So we've got all that. That should be okay. So let's do a file export. And let's export as gLTF. And export gLTF. Cool. All right. That's now been exported. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with this. Let's go to Live Race. And let's move into GLB file into our models. Just like we did with the LowPolyCar. The GLB file is 2 megabytes in size too. Yeah, don't load it up. I should have not done it. All right, that's a long name. We're just going to call that name. Let's rename it to Ferrari. Okay, so we got Ferrari. We'll refactor that with Ferrari. All right, our models, we're going to create a new directory. We're going to call it Ferrari. And we'll create a new JavaScript file called Ferrari. And what we're going to do is we're just going to copy LowPolyCar over to there. And change the name to Ferrari. Yeah, change it. Okay. All right, so I'm going to keep everything exactly the same. The big thing here, obviously, is I'm going to change this to Ferrari, Ferrari.glb. Everything else I'm going to keep the same because I don't know what's going to happen there. So I just kind of want to load up the model and see what happens. So hopefully this will work. We now go to test car, and instead of doing LowPolyCar, we're going to do Ferrari, Ferrari. We're going to Control S to save it. We're going to bring up our browser, and we're going to see what happens. Well, that's not bad. Hey, that came out pretty good. Lots of meshes there. Notice we got green on two of the wheels. Oh, this is cool. It actually came out nice. Okay, good. I'm not going to worry about rotation. Rotation really comes more into when we get it onto the track. But we got the two things here. We got to figure out what meshes to color green and what meshes not to. So mesh 1 is a wheel. And that's right, that's the inner wheel. That's another wheel. I'm trying to find the, oh, okay, that might be something there. Mesh number 9. That's the, all right, so let's change mesh number 9. So let's go back into our Ferrari.js. I can't believe that worked first time pretty much off the map here. Okay, so mesh number 9 is the color. Let's change that and let's see what happens. Yes, that's what a green Ferrari Testarossa looks like. That's not bad. Okay, so that's the right color. In fact, mesh 9, man. Okay, so basically mesh 9 is also going to probably be our telemetry mesh. So let's set the telemetry mesh to 9. And of course, that's not going to make any changes here. So that actually works really well. Now, one of the things we could do here, and I'm not really set up to do this right now. I got to play with it a little bit more because, because we're going to play with how the wheels are situated correctly. But one of the things we might eventually be able to do is to, since it looks like that each of these tires, let's see if we can get all 4 of these tires. It looks like each of these tires are their own mesh. Yeah, they are. We technically could map our current tires to these tires. Yeah, there we go. We could map our current tires to these tires and actually have the tires turn. That would be fun, but we won't do that for this video. But maybe I'll put an addendum to get that done a little bit later on. But that's what a green Ferrari Testarossa looks like. So I think what I want to do now is that pretty much, that's all there is to getting a model up and running. I was kind of thinking, if we had a model that wouldn't going to quite work correctly, then it would just kind of mess up. But I think what I want to do here, just for funsies, is let's extend this just a little bit more and let's throw this onto the track. So I'm going to have to move this over to the FWJS-race repository and start working over there and just see how this thing actually is going to look like. So I'm going to try that out. If it blows up on me and it takes a little bit more work, then we won't show that quite yet. But either way, doesn't matter. I'll see you in just a second. Okay, everybody, it looked like it actually ran right out of the gate without any problems whatsoever. What I have done here is I have, let's go back to home. I have put the Ferrari as the Red Ranger, and I've got Cybertruck as the, my Cybertruck as still as the Green Ghost, and LowPolyCar as the models for the Blue Bell and the Yellow Yak. And let's just do a Control F5. And so we'll put green inside there. That's my Cybertruck. There's my Ferrari Testarossa, and that's my LowPolyCar. That's my LowPolyCar too. So let's race and see what happens. And we have a Ferrari. That is just so cool. The scaling's a little off. I'd like to have it just a little bit bigger than that, obviously. But there we go. Oh no! It wrecked. Oh my God. It wrecked. Oh, that's just awful. Our Testarossa wrecked. Yeah, this track is just too much for Ferraris. That's all I can really say. But here we go. One more time. Let's just see if we can actually get it running this time. So there's my Testarossa. It worked. And I didn't make any adjustments whatsoever. You can see scaling needs to be done. Oh, it's going to win this time. Looks like it's going to win. It's going to win. Boom. Yes, it did. There it goes. It wins. So this also proves that the telemetry mesh was correct. So, oh man, just worked out great. I love it. So obviously scaling could be done a little bit better, but it right out of the gate worked like a champ. It just works great. So that's all there is to getting models. It's actually fairly easy to do. So now you can go hunting around for any kind of free models that you want and race just about anything you wish. What that means now is that the next series of videos are going to deal with the track. And good Lord, I don't know how many videos that's going to be. That could be another 5 or 6 videos on its own because there's a lot there. And then once we're done with that, we're going to put it all together and actually run a few races. If you like this video, please click on the like button below, subscribe to this channel, or leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. We are trying to reach 1 million subscribers by February of 2042, so your subscription counts. Thank you very much again for watching. This is the Virtuoid, aka Mike Smith. We'll see you later.